Hey everyone, it's Nora from Nora's Arc here, and it's April 21st here in Wisconsin. It's a beautiful spring day, about upper 50s, so more of a typical spring day than we had in the past couple weeks. But even though spring has just begun, it already feels like we have a million things to do in the garden. So today we thought we would tell you about some of the spring chores that we are doing. So first thing up, we need to get this lavender plant under control. So we will be pruning this lavender plant back about 2/3 back to its woody stems, and you want to wait until you're pretty sure there's no more hard frosts that are going to be coming until you do that, just so that way you don't damage the plant. And then the reason that you cut it back is because it helps it be a stronger and more compact, bushier plant when you do that. And then you get a better harvest of lavender. We also have our thyme here and our oregano. We have not had to do anything to those herbs, but we also have our sage here, and we have been cutting this guy back as well. So we'll cut him back, and we've just been doing that as we harvest it, because we sell a lot of that sage to the restaurant that we sell our produce to, and then we also use it. And in our meals and whatnot, we made a delicious herb bread a few weeks ago, and that was our first herb bread of the season, and it was awesome. And then one more thing we got going on here is we did plant a row of radishes. I don't see any sprouts coming up yet, but we also did a couple rows of radishes next to our garlic plants. So let's go take a look at the garlic. Here is our garlic, and it's looking amazing. It is about 12 to 16 inches tall now, and so that means it's time for us to take this mulch off, and we're gonna give it its first round of fertilizer. So we'll fertilize it a few times this spring, and we just do that until scapes emerge, and today will be the first time that we're doing the first round of fertilizer. And something else I wanted to mention is we're gonna be taking this mulch off because it's warm enough now, and because we have to apply the fertilizer, so we want that to get down into the soil. And I just want to give a PSA that yes, you can use pine needles as mulch. We've been doing it for a few years now. You just want to make sure that you use pine needles that are brown. So they're dead, they don't have any acidity left in them. There's this myth that if you use pine needles as mulch, it'll raise the acidity of your soil. And that's only really true if you were to use green pine needles and really work them into the soil. So just want to tell you that you can use pine needles as mulch. And then behind us, we've got our parsley plants. Those need to get potted up into some bigger pots because they're getting a little bit root bound. So that's something else we'll be doing today. And speaking of transplanting plants, let's go look at some other plants we'll be transplanting today. Speaking of plants that we're going to be transplanting today, we have this beautiful looking lettuce that we will be transplanting into our greenhouse, just like these guys today. And then we will also be transplanting these Swiss chard plants too. So last week, or a couple weeks ago, we transplanted the lettuce here that we had growing in here as well. And that all has survived, and it's getting pretty big, so we're pretty happy about that. And like I mentioned, we're going to be transplanting these lettuce plants into the greenhouse as well. We'll probably run out of room doing that, so then we're also going to be putting some of those plants into our Greenstalk planter, which we lovingly like to call the Stacky for short. So we'll be putting some of those plants into there as well. We got that set up today. That was another one of our spring chores. And we're pretty excited to have that set up so that we can have more space to grow greens and transplant plants into. So let's take a look at some of the stuff that we have going on in our raised beds, and then we'll show you the Stacky and the big garden. Over here in our raised beds, we have a lot of herbs, and then we also have green onions, we have strawberries, and we have our asparagus patch. And it's really nice having these raised beds close to the house, because then once spring starts, it's so easy to come out here and grab some stuff for dinner, especially when you get those nice spring nights in Wisconsin where it's still like 30 degrees out. So it's really convenient having these close to the house. So our green onions, we've been using those a lot. We love having those. They've come back every year now. This is like their 5th year. And then our strawberry patch, it is a little bit more thinned out than it has been in a few years, and that's because we cleaned up all these beds a few weeks ago, and we just like ripped out a bunch of weeds and had to sacrifice some strawberry plants along the way too. But also I have read that you want to thin your strawberry patch out periodically because you want the plants to have more room to grow and more room to breathe. So I think that that's fine, and we'll still get a good strawberry harvest. And then the other funny thing is that we actually have probably more strawberries on the outside of our beds now than we do in our actual strawberry bed. And then lastly, before we go to the big garden, we also have our asparagus. We've gotten a few very small harvests off of that, but that's about our 5th or 6th year that this asparagus patch has been there. So it's always really exciting when we see it come back, and it actually is producing asparagus now that we can eat. So now that we've covered everything that we've got going on up here, let's go take a look at the big garden. So here is where we set up our Greenstalk planter today, and that went pretty fast, so that was nice. And then we'll just be transplanting some of those plants that we had in our greenhouse into here today. And then behind me, you can see that we have our big garden. That's where we do a majority of our planting. And we need to till this garden, but the weather has not been cooperating. So weather gods, can you please just cooperate with us, please? So it's been raining a lot, and if you guys till, you know that it's kind of hard to till when the soil's really wet. It just kind of turns into a big mud mess. So we've been waiting for it to dry out for a few days, so that way one of these weekends we can till this garden, we can fertilize it, and then we want to let the fertilizer sit for like a week, and then we got to get our potatoes planted. So we want to try to get our potatoes in by like the end of April, but it might end up being like the first week of May this year, just due to the timing of the weather. And we did do actually a video on like how to till your soil, how to improve it with fertilizer and all that good stuff. So I'll include a link to that below if you want to go into more details on that subject. So something else that we have to do before we till this garden is we still have some stuff in there left over from last year. We had some onions that we didn't get to harvest because they weren't that big. So we've been trying to clear those out. And then we also had our parsley plants, like 50% of them survived the winter, which was crazy to me. And those have been coming back, so we'll probably just try to harvest that and use it or dry it or sell it. And then this garden will be ready for tilling once we clear it all out. So that's what we got going on over here. But before we wrap up this video today, there's one more thing I want to show you guys that's pretty crazy. Check out these kale plants. They look so awesome and they're so big. There's so much growth on them. These are kale plants that we planted last year and they survived the winter. So they definitely looked dead, like this one that did not come back, over the winter. But the last couple weeks, they've just been exploding with growth, and it's just so crazy because I didn't really realize that kale plants could survive a winter like that. We did have one kale plant that survived the winter once, but that was in our greenhouse, so we attributed it to the fact that it was in the greenhouse that it survived. But these were just outside. We did not cover them or anything, and they survived, and they're coming back even stronger. So that's so awesome because now we have a head start on being able to eat some greens from our garden. So that wraps up what we've got going on here in early spring in Wisconsin here. And if you guys enjoyed this video today, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date on how our garden evolves over the season. And we're gonna get to some of those million chores that I mentioned at the beginning of the video.